The restaurant was buzzing that evening, couples laughing, waiters rushing, the faint notes of piano filling the air. In the corner sat Emily, nervously fixing her dress, checking her reflection in the water glass, and trying to slow down her racing heart. She was about to meet her blind date, someone her best friend had set her up with. Emily had always carried her weight heavily, not just on her body, but on her soul. She had heard it all before. If only you lost a few pounds. Or she has a pretty face. But every whisper, every rejection had carved scars into her confidence. Yet tonight, she wanted to believe things could be different. Her date arrived well-dressed, confident, carrying himself like he owned the world. At first, his smile was polite, but the moment his eyes scanned her, the smile faded. "You're Emily?" he asked, hesitation dripping from his voice. "Yes," she answered softly, trying to hold on to hope. He sat down reluctantly, fiddled with his menu, then finally sighed. "Look, I didn't know. I mean, you didn't say you were. You know, this big." The words cut sharper than glass. Emily's throat tightened, and she forced herself not to cry. She tried to change the subject, tried to laugh it off, but every minute he looked more impatient. Finally, he pushed back his chair. "This isn't going to work. I'm sorry, I just can't date someone like this." And just like that, he walked away. Emily sat frozen, cheeks burning, every eye in the restaurant suddenly feeling like it was on her. The waiter approached awkwardly, asking if she'd like to order. She shook her head, mumbling, "No, thank you." All she wanted was to disappear. But then something unexpected happened. From the table next to hers, a man cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm, deep, and commanding. Emily looked up, startled. He was sharply dressed in a dark suit, clearly someone important. His eyes, however, weren't filled with pity, they were filled with something else. "Kindness, if you don't mind," he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from Emily. "I'd like to sit with you." Confused, Emily blinked. "What? Why?" "Because," he smiled softly, "it looks like someone just walked away from the best company in this restaurant, and I'd hate for you to eat alone." His name was Alexander Grant, though Emily wouldn't realize until later who he really was. A young CEO whose name was often in the business magazines. At that moment, he wasn't a CEO, he was simply a man who saw the person in front of him, not her weight. They talked. At first, Emily was hesitant, answering politely but holding back. She had been judged too many times to trust easily. But Alexander didn't let her retreat into her shell. He asked about her passions, her dreams, her struggles. When she admitted she loved painting but had given it up because people like me don't succeed in art, his expression turned serious. "People like you," he repeated. "Emily, the only people who succeed are the ones who keep going, no matter what the world says. Your size doesn't define your talent. Your heart does." For the first time in years, Emily felt truly seen. That evening changed something inside her. It wasn't about romance, it was about being reminded that she was worthy. That her value wasn't measured by a number on a scale, but by the fire in her soul. Days turned into weeks. Alexander didn't disappear after that night. He kept in touch, sometimes inviting her to galleries, sometimes just checking in. He encouraged her to pick up her brushes again. At first, Emily resisted, fear still chained her down, but slowly she began painting again, pouring her pain, her dreams, her story into every canvas. One night, Alexander surprised her by arranging for her paintings to be displayed at a small exhibition. Emily stood in shock as people admired her work, some even buying pieces. For the first time, she realized she wasn't invisible. Her art had a voice. She had a voice, but life wasn't suddenly perfect. Emily still battled insecurities. There were nights she cried herself to sleep, hearing the echoes of that blind date's rejection. But whenever she doubted herself, she remembered Alexander's words, "Your size doesn't define your worth." Slowly, she grew stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. She started walking daily, not because she hated her body, but because she wanted to care for it. She began eating healthier, not to impress anyone, but to fuel her passion. She looked at herself in the mirror, and instead of seeing shame, she began to see resilience. But months later, Emily stood in front of a larger art exhibition, this time introduced as the rising artist whose work reflects raw human emotion. The same woman who once sat in a restaurant, rejected and humiliated, was now standing tall, glowing with pride. In the audience, Alexander watched quietly, clapping the loudest when her name was announced. Afterward, Emily approached him with tears in her eyes. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why did you sit with me that night?" Alexander smiled. "Because I know what it feels like to be rejected for things you can't control. And because I saw more in you than you saw in yourself." Message: the story of Emily isn't just about rejection or a blind date gone wrong. It's about every person who's ever been told they're not enough, too fat, too skinny, too poor, too different. It's about finding the strength to rise, not for anyone else, but for yourself. Because at the end of the day, your worth isn't defined by rejection. Your worth is defined by the courage to keep going, to embrace who you are, and to shine anyway. And sometimes, the right people will sit down at your table not because of how you look, but because of who you truly are. Final takeaway for the viewer: don't let rejection write your story. You are stronger than you know, and your worth is immeasurable. The world needs your light, just as Emily found hers.